Okay, cool. So, just a little intro of who you are and maybe where you're living now.
So I'm Leilani Walker. I'm 24 years of age and I'm currently living in Manurewa, but I'm from Gisborne on the east
Oh,
coast.
wow. Do you go
Yeah.
back that much?
Now and again. Well, yeah, now and again to take my son down there to see my family, and usually like for like funerals and that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
not really.
yeah.
Yeah, well,
Hard,
that's the
eh?
only time we go home, which is quite sad. But yeah, I try to. I think we're going down there for Christmas, so
Oh,
be cool.
mean,
Yeah.
mean. And what made you want to share your story on our campaign today?
So at first I wasn't going to share my story because I was a bit whakama, as
Yeah.
we all are. But I wanted to share my story as I feel like if I share it's going to be closure for me in a way, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. Like the end of a chapter?
Yeah, like the end of a chapter.
Yeah.
And I'm on this new chapter as of this year. Next year. I'm on a new chapter. I don't want to be thinking about that. That was the old me. But yeah, and also just to show others that because you'll find that in my story. I didn't actually go to rehab to get off the meth, so
Oh, yeah.
you don't necessarily need to go to rehab to get off a drug.
Yeah.
You don't have
yeah.
to lock yourself away from the world and your family and that.
Fuck, you're only 24.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm quite eager to hear where your journey's been as to where
It's been a bit of a roller coaster.
Hey,
Yep, but it's finally stopped and it's going at a
yeah,
proper speed.
fucking awesome. So, with that being said, then where does your journey with addiction begin?
So, growing up, Dad used to drink, not all the time. Mum was a marijuana smoker. We didn't have a bad upbringing. It was just a bit unstable. So, we were either living with Mum, or if not Mum, we were living with Nan or Dad. Nan and Dad together. But other than that, we always had food. We had everything we needed, and that, that's all that matters. But yeah, I had a good upbringing. I've heard worse, so yeah, I'm quite grateful for my upbringing. I was smoking weed at 14 and drinking as well, but that was just the normal things that
Like
teenagers. It wasn't
social
addiction.
fucking- yeah,
social
wow.
for the lols,
Yeah, yeah.
But so the actual addiction. If I'm talking about, because the drug I'm talking about today is methamphetamine and synthetic weed. So the addiction and my journey actually began in early 2017.
How old were you then?
I think I would have been about 18. Yeah, 18.
Oh, yeah.
So I was living in Gisborne. I ended up moving up to Auckland early 2017. I moved to my nan's in Papakura. My uncle got me a job at picking and packing.
Oh.
Actually, just up the road on Cruise
Don't
Road.
we all have that job when we come to fucking Auckland?
Yeah, well, I was doing that.
Yeah.
And then I ended up, mixing with the wrong crowd because that's quite a physical job,
Yeah,
And
yeah.
a lot of them, they smoke that stuff, hey. Well, I didn't know much about meth. The only thing I knew about meth was my mum's oldest brother. He actually took his life.
Oh,
When I was about
wow.
4, yeah, he actually took his life because he was on meth, but he was on all sorts of drugs. And, growing up, I used to get scared, and me and my siblings and, other people, it's like, oh, nah, don't ever try meth because you'll end up like, like uncle, like you'll die. Like that's what I thought
Yeah,
of it, so,
yeah.
But anyway, I ended up smoking meth and then I got addicted to it.
What do you think that first time that you had that blast, was that just to kind of be sociable with the people that you were with at the time?
Yeah,
or?
and yeah, it was just to be sociable because I thought, and they're like, nah, try it. If you try it, you'll be getting 120% because, in picking and packing, like 100% is the minimum you got to do every day. And I was like, oh, okay, then I'll try it. Me being, reckless and eager to do things,
Yeah.
I ended up trying it and yeah.
And what was that buzz like?
Oh, I loved it. I liked it.
Straight away?
Yeah, straight away I loved it, being honest. It just, it cleared my head. I felt, free, I felt, yeah.
And so from what happened, how fast did it progress from then?
It progressed pretty fast because I ended up losing my job within 2 months.
Wow.
I lost the job. The only reason why I was actually kept on for the job was because my uncle got me the job through his friend, and his friend was just giving me chances. Anyway, I lost the job, so
Why? How come?
because, you know, that was his friends. Like, I was his friend's niece, so, you know, he knew I needed the job and that.
No, I mean, how come you lost it?
Oh, not showing up to work.
Oh, yeah.
And then going to work and coming down and not being able to, you know, perform. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that happened, and then anyway, that was over. Lost the job, moved on. Then I ended up meeting my ex, this guy. He was on synthetics, and then I ended up smoking. I started smoking synthetics as it was cheaper.
Yeah.
It was only $20, so I couldn't afford the meth habit
Methamphetamine.
without my job. So
Yeah.
I ended up moving on to that, and yeah, my life went down really fast, downhill.
What can you explain? Kind of, because I don't know if I've had synthetics.
Well, back then I heard that it was all good when it was being tested, and, you know, it was legal.
Yeah.
When it was, apparently. But when I was smoking it, it was just being made in someone's backyard with rat poisoning, horse tranquilizer,
Holy
chili, all
fucking
sorts,
hell.
chemicals, you name it.
And what does that buzz like?
So you take it, you smoke it like, you know, normal, like weed. You have it, and then as soon as you have it, you can either start playing up, like you don't know what you're doing, or you'll fall out. If you're used to the buzz, you'll just fall asleep. And then anyone can do whatever they want to you, and then you wake up, and then, you know, you're up, and you're like, fuck, he took my bag, or like, and then as soon as you wake up, you're like, where's the next hit? And then you go for it.
Oh, hell.
Yeah, it's really bad. I personally, I'll say it's worse than meth.
Hey.
Yeah.
So you started taking that, and then what happened?
I was doing that for about 3 months, and yeah, it was a pretty bad time of my life. You know, I'd go have a cone, then I'd wake up, and then people would be like, "Fuck, did you know that you were swimming in your spew?" You know, and then even one time I fell asleep on the stovetop because I was having a cone on the stovetop and fell asleep, and I burned some of my hair.
Oh my god.
It's funny to laugh about it now, but at the time it wasn't. But yeah, I burnt some of my hair, and, you know, if the person hadn't come back, I would have been sleeping on, you know, and I'd wake up with like bruises on my head, and I'd be like, "Oh, didn't you know you collapsed? You took your cone and you just collapsed off the steps." I'm like, "Hey."
Oh my god.
Yeah.
And then what happened after you started?
So I was doing all of that, me and my ex, and then my family down in Gisborne had caught on to it. They caught on to what I was doing.
Yeah.
Because Nan and Uncle actually took a video of me when I come home, and I was playing up, and I don't know what I was doing, but they reckon it was like scary looking.
Oh.
They sent it to the whānau, and then my dad had enough. He was like, "No, I'm going to come up and grab you." Because there was multiple times where they tried to pay for a bus ticket for me to come back, but I keep getting sunnied out and missing the bus.
Yeah.
Not making it to the bus. Yeah, so I did, Dad come up, he picked me up, took me back down, and that was towards the end of 2017. And then I went back down to Gisborne. I sobered up. My ex went to jail. I ended up sobering up for about 6 weeks. And then in January of 2017, I ended up finding a job back up here in Auckland at Takanini McDonald's, and a place to stay, like a boarding place. Because I was so eager to get out of Gisborne, and I felt like I was
How
ready.
come?
Because it sucks down there. It actually really sucks. And my ex was in prison. And, you know, we were still chatting, and then I wanted to come back to see him, you know, like, yeah, being stupid. But yeah, I came back to Auckland around early February of 2018, and at the place that I had found, because I boarded with this random, I didn't even know who he was. It was just on Facebook, but I was so eager to get back up here, and Nan and Uncle didn't want me back at home, so I had nowhere else to go, but I wanted to be in Auckland. So I ended up, you know, taking a chance, and I come up to Auckland and was boarding at this place. And at that place is where I met my son's father, my son that I have now. So, yeah, I met him there, and he was on meth. And then, yeah, I relapsed again into meth. And I started working as well at the same time.
Yeah. Were you able to function?
Yeah, for like 2-3 months I was working at Takanini McDonald's, and then me and him actually got together, and we found another place to board at, which was more suitable for us. So, you know, we were doing that and still getting to know each other. But then, I think that's when I became a full-blown meth addict. It wasn't in 2017. I think it actually really started, heavily in...
And what does that look like? What was the difference from 2017 to now this time?
So, that 2017, I wasn't smoking that much, like just, like a quarter, every couple of days and then staying up and all that, But then this time, we were smoking from like a half minimum to grams a day. Yeah, and then I ended up...
How were you paying for it?
He had connections he was doing things to get it. I wasn't doing anything to get it, I was just smoking for free, more like it. So that happened, and then I ended up losing my job at, Tuckney McDonald's, due to poor work performance and not showing up at all. So I lost my job, and then, things started going downhill pretty fast, because it gets to a point where you don't have drugs all the time. Like, you do, and then, there's, like, patches in between.
What would it look like when you run out?
Sleeping, Not arguing, though. We weren't arguing, because we were still getting to know each other. But it wasn't until one day where we had an argument, and... I said something, he said something, then I said something, and then, next thing you know it, he hit me. I was traumatised from it, because, he's quite a big fella in that, and, it scared me when he did that. I had a swollen nose, the biggest black eye, and, that happened. After that, I went back to him and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I was like, I just, like, thinged it off, just brushed it off. And then the next day, I ended up running away. I packed my stuff up and I took off and I ran back to my ex that was on synthetics. And then I started smoking synthetics again.
Fucking hell.
And then that went on for about a whole month. And in that time, when I was back with my ex, I was going up the road to see my sister, because she was actually working in Papakura, and I was going up the road to see her, like, to ask her for money, be hungers and use her phone. And then she was telling me, "Oh, hey, that fella that you were living with, the one, he's been texting every day for like weeks, wondering where you are, asking if you're fine." And and I was like, "Oh, really?" I looked at him and I was like, "Man," and like, it was pretty genuine what he was saying to me. And anyway, I ended up going back to him. So I ended up leaving my ex, and then I went back to him. And then for like another month, I was just going backwards and forward, like, couldn't make up my mind.
Wow.
I was so lost, that's what drugs does to you. You're not there.
No clear direction.
Yeah, no clear direction. Your head's just clouded 24/7. And then I finally, my son's father, he ended up saying, "Oh, come on, make up your mind, who do you want?" And then I was like, I weighed it up. I was like, pros and cons on each one. And I was like, and so I ended up going back to my son's father. So I went back to him, and then, we were, back together, and he was working, and then, what happened after that? Oh, his mum ended up finding a house for all of us, so we ended up moving in together. And then, probably, I'd say, towards the end of 2018, I found out I was pregnant with my son. Oh, my son now. So I found out I was pregnant.
Were you still hearty using?
Unfortunately, yeah. Which I'm, to this day, it's embarrassing. It's it's shameful. But I was still smoking while I was pregnant. And and then 2019 came. We were still doing the same shit, smoking, he was doing him, but he started racking up court charges, all that stuff, as you do with that drug.
That's what comes with it.
So he started doing that, and then we couldn't stay at his mum's, because they were coming to his mum's all the time looking for him for warrants, and then, so I started going into emergency housing, so he could be with me.
Yeah.
Because, they wouldn't know where he was, so we were in and out of emergency housing and staying at people's houses. When they'd catch on that he was there, we'd have to go to like someone's house. And
all of this while you were carrying?
Yeah, while I was carrying. And around June of 2019, early June. The police had caught up with him and he got arrested. And then a week later, I not knowingly went into early labour.
Yeah.
It's hard to talk about this. So I went into early labour. I didn't know, at the time I just thought, because I think it was about 31 weeks at that time.
First child?
Yeah, first child. I didn't know, when I had the pains, because that night before that I'd been up smoking crack all night. I was at a mate's, because I was sad that, my son's dad had gone to prison. I felt a bit lost. And I'd been up smoking crack all night. And then I went home early hours of the morning and then started coming down. But at that same time I was having pains. And I had not knowingly actually went into labour that day. But I didn't know. And, my mother-in-law was like, come on, baby's on his way, you need to get to the hospital. And I was like, oh, shut up, what are you, bro, as you're coming down, you just don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the pain started getting excruciating, and I was like, fuck, no, I think I do have to go. So we went, and lucky that I did go at the time that I went, because when I got to the hospital, they told me if I didn't get there on time, baby would have been a stillborn.
Wow.
So we got to the hospital. Everything was so hectic. We just, we went into the, got there, and then they checked baby. They said his heart rate was high. He was in a lot of distress, and that they had to perform a emergency C-section to get him out. Anyway, I went into surgery, and then it went well. Baby got out and that, and then, I woke up from, because you wake up, and then I felt a bit drowsy, but I got to meet my boy, and it was the happiest day of my life. But in the next couple of days, because he was in ICU, so he had the tubes and all of that, but I knew something was wrong. And then I think a couple of days, 3 days later, he started having seizures and that, and then they did a brain scan, and the doctor had to talk to me about, the outcome and what they think, what the future for him looks like. And and that's when they told me that, sorry.
You're right.
That's when they told me that he was going to have severe cerebral palsy for the rest of his life. So, I was just, I was really upset. When I found that out, I was like, fuck, really, Leilani, all he had to do was just not smoke. Just for that 9 months, it's not long, and you could have gone back to it, but I was so selfish. I didn't put my baby first. And I was sitting there. I remember I was sitting there when they were telling me that, and I was just blaming myself. I was like, fuck, this is all your fault. It's all your fault. And they're like, no, it's not your fault, it happens. It just happens, you didn't know. And I'm like, but yes, I know it happens, but I know if I wasn't under the influence of that drug, I would have had the smarts, my judgment would have been better, I would have gone on time, and maybe things would have been different, but, that's just not how my story goes. So, so that kind of cut me up. And then I'd been 2 weeks clean, and just seeing my son every day just made me feel guilty and like shit, and I started smoking again, because I remember before I went into, to the hospital with him, I still had some in my bag, and plus I had the C-section pain, so it kind of helped. So I started smoking again. Anyway, 6 weeks went by. We ended up getting released from hospital, and then we ended up going back to my mother-in-law's house, and then his dad actually got bailed on Ian bail to her house, so we're a happy family again. And then, we started smoking again, me and him. And then that was going on, for a month or so. And then his mum had enough. She ended up cancelling his EM bail and he had to go back inside. And then I ended up moving from there because I was like, in a hating kind of buzz with her. I was like, why'd you do that?
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. But she only did it, she thought it was in his best interest. So, that happened. And then, I was just back. I was everywhere, me and my son. We were just everywhere for a bit there. And then I ended up patching things up with my mother-in-law, went back there, and then she ended up finding a house for us, our own house, which is just around the corner from me. So we ended up moving into there, and then my ex got out of jail and EM bail again to the new address, and then we were there. And then we started smoking again. He got out, smoking again, and then back at it, domestic violence, all those kind of things that come with it. And then he ended up cutting the bracelet. He went back inside. And then, I was doing the same thing, but it was just me, whilst looking after my son. Even though I was doing that, I always made sure my son was cared for. He had everything,
Yeah.
It was just maybe not like the attention he didn't have from me, but he was always looked after. And I think it was easy for me because he was a special needs baby, so he didn't do much like a normal kid would. They run around, they start, he went back inside, and then I was just carrying on, with my meth habit, and then he ended up getting back out again, but to rehab, and then he was clean in rehab, and then he got EM bailed after he finished his 12 weeks in rehab. He got EM bailed back to our address again, and then I stopped smoking. So I had actually stopped for 2 months, or close to 2 months. I had break with him. We both stopped, and then one day I ended up bringing up the subject of meth, and then before you know it, you were smoking again. So the father always tried, but I always, I'd ruin it some way or somehow. So, I'm just acknowledging that. And then we started smoking again, and then we had another big argument, as we were coming down. We had a big argument, and then he took off, cut the bracelet. He took off. But the only reason he'd do that was so he didn't hit me or hurt me. He just wanted to get away from me. So he did that. And that would have been around November of 2020. And then, And then when he took off, we ended up being back with each other like a couple hours later, as you do. As you do. So it was pointless. So, we end up, teeing back up, and then we continued just living everywhere else but our address because the warrant was out for his arrest, so we were all over the place again. But I was mainly staying at his mother's with baby, because it was safe there, but he couldn't because the police would go backwards and forth. Anyway, last year, February 2021, that he ended up going back to prison, and then I ended up calling it off. I was sick of it, so we ended up separating.
Hey.
Yeah.
How did that come about? You just fucking tired?
I'm embarrassed, but no, I started seeing other people. Because before, when he'd gone, I wouldn't, I'd be loyal and that. But this last time, I think I just had enough, and I wanted to move on. And I was lonely too, so I ended up, meeting new people, and then I ended up meeting my partner, one I'm with now, last year. And when I first got with him, I was still smoking, but he told me, if you want to be with me, if you want a chance, you got to stop smoking, I'm not going to be with you if you're on that shit. It's just out the gate. And I was like, oh, okay. But I didn't, I was like, at first, okay. And then, and at that same time, because I still had my son, at that same time, when I had been seeing him, in the background, Oranga Tamariki was getting involved. But I didn't know that, And then...
What were they doing, just kind of building a case or something?
No, because I had left my ex then.
Yeah.
And so I think, he was talking to his mother, and then his mother was finding out things about me that I'd been doing.
Oh,
and then, she was like, nah, you're dragging my muku through all this, nah. So she put a report of concern and she wanted to take baby while
Oh,
I
yeah.
got clean.
Yeah.
But, you know, I didn't want that, eh? You know, as everyone does,
Yeah.
I didn't want that. I was like, nah. Yeah, and then my mum told me about it. She's like, oh, there's a meeting, you know, we're having a meeting about baby. And I was like, what? A meeting? You know, I was pretty offended. Yeah, and then we had the meeting. My mum came up, all the family were there, and my in-laws. And then at that meeting, it was decided that my son was to go stay with my ex's mum.
Yeah.
But then that didn't end up happening, which I was kind of sad about, because that means that he would have just been around the corner from me. So, you know, I could have been able to see him more. But plans ended up changing, so they ended up deciding it'd be best if he goes to Gisborne and be looked after by mum and dad, because mum and dad aren't together.
Yeah.
So, you know, so, and I like that idea more. I guess I liked it that he was going to my family, because I feel like I had the power. Like, whereas if he was going to my ex's family, we weren't together, I felt like it would have been a bit harder.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So that ended up happening. I was pretty cut up about it, because you know, I was so used to seeing, you know, despite my meth habit, I was so used to having my son with me every day. There was not a day where he wasn't with me, you know. So yeah, that was hard to think. And I remember at the meeting they did tell me, because, you know, you write up the plan and all of that.
Yeah.
And I remember at the meeting they did tell me, they're like, oh, well, you know, what do you think? And I told them straight up, I said, nah, yeah, that's all good. He can go to Gisborne, but I only need 6 months. Just give me 6 months max. That's all I need to get clean, and I'll have him back. I promise I'll do it. And they're like, are you sure? Be realistic, because, you know, because with them, they reckon, oh, it usually takes a year or two,
Yeah.
blah, 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 all that.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's them, but, you know, no, I was pretty motivated to get my son back. Yeah, and then he ended up going to Gisborne, and then I was trying to come off meth. I smoked it one time. I remember I did have it once before I actually started, you know, giving up.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, at that same time, when I lost my son temporarily, my partner that I'm with now, he also lost his mother. So, yeah, I think at that time, like, we were kind of a perfect fit. You
Like
know, we were
clung
both
to each
leaning,
other.
like
Yeah,
leaning on
yeah.
each other for support, and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah. And I stopped smoking. I had one last puff, and then I stopped. And that was in early July, I had my last puff.
Last year?
Yeah.
How did you kind of maintain your sobriety? What kind of things did you have to do
What
to...
did I do?
Yeah.
Okay, so straight up, I just sat home, I just got stoned. I watched YouTube, true crime videos.
Yeah.
I was on Facebook. Yeah, I didn't go anywhere. I shat, ate, and slept.
Stayed away from all temptation,
Yeah.
eh?
And it was good because, you know, my partner had, like, you know, the cards and that, and, like, I wasn't allowed to drive anywhere, you know. It was like I was in my own little rehab, but just
Yeah.
on my own, you know,
Yeah.
with my partner. Yeah. And then as the days started going by, you know, like, you know, the weeks started going by, it started getting easier. By week 3, like, I didn't even know hadn't smoked for, like, that 3 weeks until my partner told me, goes, man, it's been 3 weeks. You can do this, you know, keep doing it. And I was like, yeah, I can do it. And yeah, so that's how I stopped smoking.
Have you had any triggers or any moments that you're like, fuck, I want to blast or something like that?
Yep, which we all do. But then after I think like that, I think, nah. Because if I do that, all my progress is just going to go right down the toilet, you know, like everything I've worked hard for, especially my partner too, you know, and then letting my son down and my family. And nah. And then I look at that lifestyle compared to what I got now, and I think, nah. I like having money.
What's life like now for you?
Like having money, like being able to go and do things, you know, always having energy, like having a good night's rest, you know, eating properly, you know, like passing your bowels every day, you know, like that's, you know, like, because before that wasn't happening. It wasn't. So that's what my life looks like today. Happiness, you know, stay at home mum, and that's beautiful. And you know, I'm really glad that my mother-in-law put that report of concern in, and I'm glad I met my partner. So
yeah, I feel like in the moment when it comes to our children, in that moment we're like, fucking, how the fuck would you do this? Offended and all of that. But then when we reflect back, it's like, fuck, that actually was the best thing to
like
do.
you were out the gate.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
the best thing
I
for
was
them
fucked
to
up.
do.
That was some fucked up shit.
Yeah, you're right.
And
So,
how's baby doing?
baby. Oh, I just had another baby 2-3 months ago. That's what I missed up.
Hey.
Yeah. So that's another thing that kept me motivated. Man, I was too busy yapping away. Nah,
Oh,
so So 3 months into it, I ended up getting pregnant, and that, you know, I was like, nah. You know, I got to do it. I got to do things right this time. You know, I got to give my baby a chance. You know, I'm not going to repeat what I did. Yeah.
And how's that baby? All good?
He's good, yeah, he's good. No complications. Yeah.
And how's baby? And is baby still in Gizzy? With...
Nah, he's with me.
Oh,
Yeah. So, so about that, yes. So last year in July, he went out of my care. He come back in December with Dad, because Dad had him in full-time care. He come back in December, and they came and lived with us. We found another house, a suitable house. And then I told Dad, you know what, Dad, just do what you want to do. I'm going to take care of baby. I'm going to do him. Even though I was heavily, I was pregnant. I didn't care. I was like, no, I'll do everything. And then it got to the point where I was pretty much just doing everything. And then I was like, nah, I'm ready, And then I ended up calling my social worker. I was like, hey, I want a meeting, I want a meeting ASAP, because I feel like, this is dragging on now. I've stopped the meth. My son's back. I've been, caring for him. I've done everything right.
Yeah.
So, we ended up having the meeting. And then, we had the meeting in February of this year. I ended up getting my son back.
Wow.
Yeah. So, all that hard work, he was the prize at the end.
Yeah, for sure. So you got both kids now?
Yeah, so I got both the kids now.
And I know in the beginning you were like, oh, my new journey starting, did you say next year or this year?
Next year, yeah.
What's that journey?
Oh, because it's like, I feel like I've just gotten back to my normal self, as of probably a month ago.
Yeah.
Because there are the after effects of the meth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like it's slowly going, but I'm not.
What are some of those?
For me, a lot of it's like anger outbursts.
Yeah.
Yeah, like getting stressed out.
Because you have to learn how to fucking cope. Deal with all that shit all over again.
Yeah.
And what have you been doing to be able to curb that or to deal with that?
Just, taking deep breaths, just thinking about the whole situation. My partner's a big support. Yeah, he always reassures me that, because I feel like a crazy person. But, he always reassures me that, no, it's all right, love, you can, you're all right, and we just talk through it and stuff. So, yeah, no, he's a big support of my life, yeah.
Fucking mean. How does it feel when you reflect back to all that kind of going back and forwards and all that, how you were living?
I just think, WTF, eh? That's what I think, fuck.
Yeah.
How was I, why, I don't, I just think my mind was just all over the place. Yeah. Why I did that. Yeah, and... Yeah.
What would you say to any girls that, or anyone that's going through what you fucking went through?
What would I say?
Is there anything anyone could have said to you when you were going through all of that might have made you go on the straight and narrow?
Probably not, because I wasn't really listening. People were telling me things, but I wasn't listening. Yeah. I guess maybe because a lot of my problem too was accepting my life at that time. I think that's a thing that people do, and they're like, nah, they just accept that that's who they are and that's their life. Yeah. That's actually not who you are when you're on drugs. That's not you. That's not your life. There's actually another life waiting for you.
Yeah.
yeah, don't sit there and accept that that's your life. Like, I would always say that on a daily basis. I'm like, nah, I'm smoking meth for the rest of my life, you know. There's nothing, no, I can't, there's nothing else for me. There are bigger and better things for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hard out.
probably that.
And what's the one thing that you feel as though helped you majorly? Do you think it was the fact that your ex-mother-in-law put in that thing for concern?
Yep, that. And, yeah, that and the support of my partner and also my friend or my family.
Yeah. Fucking mean.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you want to share with us today?
No, there's nothing else. That's it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we just want to, on behalf of CWK, just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story. Fucking mean story. And you're all still young. You've got a big, massive life ahead of you. Fucking hell. It's going to be awesome. And we wish you and your little whānau the best for your future.
Thank you, Nix. Cheers.